It's,
Who still wants to bowl over kids?
yeah.
Correct, I just have to buy them now.
And we are recording.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order, and can see the way today's going already. So we'll see how we can do. I need a motion to confirm the agenda as amended twice.
Yes, through you, Mayor Woodbury, it's to include staff report. Let me get the number, Finance 2022-030, and then also to include correspondence from the SVCA, which is an addition that Councillor Dobreen was wanting added, which we'll put on the screen when they come to that point in the agenda.
Okay, you'll move that, Brian?
Yes, I will.
And Jason, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried.
Just step back.
Declaration of pecuniary interest. If you declare now or at any time, and give the paperwork to Lindsay and write lots of stuff on it. Need a motion to resolve into committee of the whole. Barb and Brian, any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. And pointing a chair.
Pointing at chair?
Yeah, don't point at a chair. Brian,
I'll appoint Mayor Woodbury to chair the meeting.
the seconder.
Move that we do that, actually.
Okay. Jason, any other, okay, all in favor? And that is carried. And then now we have, we need a motion to put the, okay, so it jumped here. We have motion to put the budget on the table, receive for information, and that the committee of the whole recommend the council receive the staff report, and we direct staff to proceed with administrative actions for it. So I need the mover and seconder just to put that on the table. Martin and Michael. Okay, so that is on the table, and it's all you, Liam. So glad you're here.
Alright. So the point of the report is just basically get a discussion going as to what the 2023 capital budget requirements are. The current percent of this is sort of presented as a needs, what the department needs, as opposed to what we can afford to fund. So the discussion is to decide what we are actually going to do and what we are going to do first. I believe the main departments that are a funding challenge for 2023 are the fire department and the roads. And I know there's been a lot of discussion on the roads in the past, so I will leave it to the individual departments to discuss those projects. So, does council want to go a quick summary by all the other departments, just for 2023 requirements are, or do they want to focus on roads and fire?
What do you guys?
Can we focus on the roads and fire and then do the other ones after the fact? Since you said they're the most important, that would be.
Sure. Okay. I'm seeing that in head, so we'll go with consensus on that. So,
Okay.
yep.
So I say we go to the roads, and I will pass it to Jim.
Okay. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, good people. There's quite a bit entailed with the 2023 roads budget here. We know that we will be incurring debt for some of it, especially the Victoria Street reconstruction from Ida to Russell Street. That also has tagged with it the ICIP green funding, which has about $5 million that we've already been awarded to work with that project, but the roads component will also have sidewalk all the way down, stormwater improvement all the way down, and proper outlets. And we're proposing, like we did on Main Street East, to give outlet to property frontage for putting sump pumps in or that type of idea, and get it out of the other systems or overflow on lawns. So similar to that Main Street East project as far as storm, curb and gutter. And with that too, we're also looking, there's a component for Artemisia Street South for tying in. When we did Main Street East, we came, I'm gonna say halfway, that it's roughly in that vicinity, down and connected water main, because at that time Artemisia was just stubbed and was not connected, so now it's looped. But bring that section where we connected onto is 4-inch, bring that back up to 6-inch water main, and also rehab the half of the pavement on that half of Artemisia Street. So that's kind of had as a separate line item, but tied with the Victoria Street project, and anticipating debt funding to help with that as well. So that's the biggest one, because it's about 5.7 million currently, is what the proposed budget estimates are through Triton for that work to be done. And then the corresponding water and wastewater budgets as well have some indication of those roads affected as well. So that's the big one, but going back up, we have the Stephen Pit 2, road fencing, and tree planting and stripping. That's as soon as we have our ARA license issued. We're still working on those steps, and Dave and I have some information that'll be coming forward in an upcoming council meeting in regards to finalizing that piece to get that pit licensed. So we need to have that pit licensed as well, as because the Hopeville pit, the underwater extraction, it was finished this year. So we ended up having to purchase gravel. So if we do not have an ARA license issued that we can get gravel happening for early next year, we will have to put in the operations side of budget for maintenance gravel to purchase gravel for the east end of the township. Hagan Street road improvements. This was Councillor Shearson had requested about looking at full urbanized section between basically the rail trail in that vicinity to Young Street. So to do that, we also had some budget this year to extend the culverts. We were waiting on GRCA permits. We got them just within the last month or so. So a little bit timing issue with trying to get that work accomplished. So that permit's good for 2 years, but to do a full urban on that with sidewalk and street lighting included, 590,000 is the budget estimate from Triton. The next line item is S97 and S98. Those are bridges on 12 between 55 and 57. They are currently cast in place. They are our worst bridges in the bridge study the last few years. We believe we can replace those with dual culverts like we have in the past. But I want to note, and that's why I brought it to attention in this budget too, we did not do any bridge work as far as capital upgrades on structures in 2022, and we could, if council wanted to, get by without doing this work on these culverts, but realize that that's 2 years in a row that we have not did any bridge work capital needs, and that will also keep reflecting in the bridge reports. I do have a bridge report that'll come with the next budget meeting, which again we've seen in the past is asking for $12 million for this year for bridge improvements and $25 million in the next 5 years. So again, like we've discussed in previous budgets, those are unrealistic, reachable goals for us, and all Ontario municipalities are similar in those type of inventories of bridge work. So again, though, just wanted to make sure that I'm putting a bridge component in, that council realizes where we are with our bridge work. So. The next one is the Agnew Pit Rehab. That's just finalizing for the sale of that pit. We had to do a amendment here in the last month because part of that rehabilitation plan had said to take out the Hall Route Road that was established back to where the underwater extraction was. And in all reality, whoever's going to have that property is going to want a road back to the pond, I'm sure. So we did an ARA friendly amendment, and it's now included that the road can stay. So again, that is a sales feature, I believe, as again, it'd be redundancy of taking it out and putting it back in for whoever. So, but what we need to do to finalize that is some preparation for some topsoil to be applied on the extraction area on the floor that's not in the water area, of course, and I believe it's 600 tree saplings have to be planted in that vicinity too for the rehab. That rehab for this pit is considered recreational. It's not got a agricultural rehab type component to that property. Side Road 75, that is paving from 26 to 22. Currently with the way that the roads were built back in Proton days were lifts of basically 50 millimeters of asphalt. We're proposing to put in 2 lifts of 90 or 100 millimeter, so 3 or 4 inches of asphalt to take up the base of the road to be able to get longevity out of it with the heavier traffic we're seeing on it, as well as we expect that the drain works will be completed in next year for drain 75, which will help alleviate water along the side of Side Road 75. So we are still in the works of 3 smaller road cross culverts to be installed here yet this year. We're hoping that's going to be done here within the next 2 weeks for settling in for next spring paving. High Point improvements. This is to coincide with the White Rose Phase 3 development. They have to do some external work on the Bradley section of road to Gray Street, but we are proposing a connection to tie in sidewalk on one side and fill in the ditch with storm piping to do a connection of sidewalk around Bradley to High Point and connect up to the sidewalk starts there just past Pine Court, so that'll give a connection for pedestrian. We may be able to work with the developer on some sort of credit or financing to help along with, but they're wanting to proceed with that work in the 2023 season is what we're hearing. Sorry, my computer just timed out or whatever here.
It had enough?
Yeah. We talked about the big one, Victoria Street. We included the Artemisia Street, the next line. The Holstein Pit expansion license, we've been talking with the neighboring owner about some different options to consider. But again, this would take an amendment to the ARA license and some of that study work that would be involved. So again, not finalized whether, not looking maybe to purchase that property, but maybe a lease type agreement or some sort of rental fee type of for tonnage that comes out, but those are in the works. But again, to keep in the foresight that there is an opportunity for some pit expansion here in Holstein and will be required in the future years too, and a good opportunity to be starting to think about it. So, and with us knowing how the process works to get licensing, you know, it doesn't happen next year. It's going to be a few years out. So, again, a bit of a placeholder. The 100,000 that could maybe be half that, but just bringing to your attention what that future need is. The next one's the Holstein overhead garage door replacement. Again, you've just seen the building condition assessment report about you know, keeping facilities in order. This would also coincide a little bit with our energy management plan of a different style of door with facing the south to be the full window type doors for some heating opportunity to grab some you know, free sunshine coming in kind of thing, those type of, but again, just putting on a horizon some facility work that, you know, we need to keep thinking about as well for all the facilities in the township. Nothing contributed to the reserves at this point, and the next one down the line is Ida Street South from Victoria to Hambury. This got a kind of on our radar a little bit with the Main Street, or sorry, the Victoria Street project as well. We're proposing to help with flow servicing towards the Eco Parkway to increase the water main size coming out of well 3 from the current 6-inch along Victoria from well 3 out to Ida up to 10-inch, and that would help with some capacity of flow. And when we get to Ida Street, at Hambury, the water main that was installed there is 8-inch. So we're looking at proposing to help with that flow servicing to continue the 10-inch out to Hambury to connect it to an 8-inch there again, because between, currently it would be a 6-inch between the 10 and the 8. So.
Just to add to that, that would be an item that we put in a future DC. This is a discussion that's just come up, so we could grab that in a future development charge if we do that work for the upgrade, because it is a fire flow issue to support future growth.
Yep.
And there will be improvement with that fire flow at some point in time. The water tower will help, but not necessarily that far out. What will help in the future is when we can loop in from Highway 10 and there's another way for water to travel as opposed to just currently one way to get there. So, the next one is the sale of the Stephen Pit Farm. Again, that's contingent on our having our ARA license in place, and then making a sale structured that we retain the lease and the ownership of the pit until it's rehabbed and then turned back to a farm after that is completed, which is, you know, a 25 to 40 year horizon. So it's not again going to happen in 5 years that we're done. So it's a long-term project there, and to suit our needs. We're suggesting a municipal properties tree harvest. We know that we have a fairly decent woodlot on the property purchased east of the landfill last year, and we're going to look at some of the other township properties. A lot of them are around the landfill area there. Looking at, you know, white ash if it needs to come out because of ash borer and those type of things. So looking at utilizing some tree harvest funds. Liam will point out that goes back into general, though I believe it's not, doesn't go to roads, and neither does necessarily the sale of the farms and the pits and that stuff either. But it's identified here in this area.
Yeah, so any sale of property or tree harvest, I have just presented as going into reserves, just because they're uncertain as to whether or not the sale will occur or the amount. So we don't plan on spending any of that money in 2023, but we plan to do those projects.
And then we have added paving 26 from 75 to Highway 10 with the recent grinding of those road sections. And that would be proposed, it's not in here, but it was a 90 millimeter application there. Again, 2 lifts, a lot of heavy truck traffic coming off there. So we've also been able to, and up on the side road 75 one as well, look at grabbing some DC out of a component that's there for rural roads, and that's for a level of service upgrade. So the reason that we can apply a DC if there's DCs available there is because we're going from that 50 millimeter pavement to 90 or 100, so getting a different service level and life expectancy of the application. So, and the next one down the line is Holstein Dam. Again, we're not totally sure. I'm supposed to have had the dam safety report. It hasn't materialized quite yet, so I'm expecting it at any time. We've also looked into another option, whether that we purchase the sheet piling that's installed from the contractor. I do have a price. He sent it to me. Actually, this was just a placeholder in here, but his number's $50,000. Currently, we're paying $3,000 a month for the rental of the sheet piling sitting there. Councillor Fruid mentioned that the crane's still there. Yeah, they were supposed to mobilize it out somewhere else, another job in August or September, we've heard, but that got delayed. So his availability for equipment, it's able to sit there because he's still thinking he's going to pull it out whenever he gets a go-ahead here. But we don't know exactly when that is, and as soon as we get the dam safety report and the next steps through BM Ross, that report will be coming to council to give you an indication. So,
just because we're on the Holstein Dam, do we have a number as to what that has cost us so far?
$200,000.
Liam just
I believe it was about 201,000
Okay,
to date.
yeah, that's what I didn't know if that had been updated at all. $3,000 a month leasing the equipment. Thanks.
yeah. And so again, more report coming on that and what the option, the preferred option, or what we can do with other ministries and what they're having, they're saying what to tell us to do. So stay tuned. Again, right now, the water's running through the sluice as it basically was before. We're hearing that there's 19 inches of water going through the mill still. So that's going out to that tributary that satisfies Saugeen Conservation at this point in time. So a lot of moving pieces there, and we'll update council as soon as we have more information. I know it's been sitting there and kind of been stalled, but that's where we are. Signs is something that we continue to have every year in a budget for replacement and adding signs in places. And for equipment in 2023, we're looking at a grader replacing unit 100. It's kind of shocking that we've heard of a grader sale this year that was closer to 500,000 that was purchased, but the budget numbers they're telling us for next year's purchasing have shot about another 100,000 up on that equipment. So we have in here a 10-ton trailer that's to haul our own equipment around. Ours is getting a little bit tired, and this is a little bit bigger than the current one we have. We also have in here new tandem. This is an increase to level of service that we've carried in the previous DC and going forward. DC money to contribute to increasing level of service, knowing that some of our roads may be getting reclassified and maybe at that point that we have to do something like an afternoon shift on some of those arterial roads. Something like a 49, a 75, 73, those type of roads with increased
Commuter
traffic volumes is what's going to drive it. So again, that's something that could be put off to another future year, but we carried it another time. So again, just looking for information about whether to increase it at this point or not. And the last one wasn't actually supposed to be in this budget, but that's the excavator upgrade replacement. We've had discussions with insurance about replacing kind of like for like. Everything seems to be in the States. We've heard that they've reached out and researched a little bit, but I've also requested now what a payout would be. They haven't given me a firm number. They kind of seemed around 115,000 maybe. Whether we could take that money and contribute to another excavator and something we can source here, you know, kind of locally, as opposed to looking at that like for like kind of thing stateside is currently where it seems all the models are. So. Yeah, so pretty hefty budget by the look of things. You know, we've heard the comments about from the public and council itself about roads and where they were going with them and how they are these days. But you know, this is reality. This is the money that's going to take to keep infrastructure in place and going. And we need direction from council on how to look at this through your eyes, through everybody else's eyes, and here's the needs. So.
Well, I'm in the wonderful spot of being able to turn this over to other people. Michael, I'll let you go, and then I'd like to get Brian's thoughts on.
Thanks, Jim. I'm just kind of wondering, I didn't see any DC charges for the Hagen Street. Dave talked about that we could be able to use DC charges for that loop.
Possibly. That'd have to be investigated.
And then I don't see any other road work other than what we ripped up this year to put back asphalt. And I know a few of the other roads are gonna need replacement, hardtop replacement on before another year. So I just kind of wonder where you're looking at those. I know they're not in here, but shouldn't we be looking at some of those?
Well, again, yeah, absolutely. If you go into the future years, you're going to see some of those. For instance, in 24, we're looking at you know, the side road 11 that was ground, going again to 90 millimeter pavement, 1.3 million. At this time, 04, which we took up between 11 and Gray Road 14, we are looking at leaving it in gravel for the future years. It's plugged in somewhere, I believe, maybe for surface treatment again. But yeah, the future years do have some other components. This budget too, because of the way the pavements have, you got to realize that Proton pavement that we're looking at is over. When they decided at amalgamation to do a whole bunch of paving kind of all at once and did that thin layer, you know, that was 20 plus years ago, and all that's starting to factor in now. You know, looking back in hindsight on trying to keep some other preservative measures happening on some of those roads. We could have took 400,000 or 500,000 here or there, but what we did in the previous years was, pave new roads, construct new roads like 39 Wilder Lake Road, which were big chunks of money. In the last number of years, we've done $1 million bridges, you know, so that's what's taken away from working with capital on some of the other side was big ticket items, so.
I think too, Jim, what plays into it as well is that back going a bit more than the 20 years ago, even probably up to 30, the province was given 90 cents on the dollar for paving a lot of these rural roads. But that all happened at once and then kind of stopped. So there's a whole lot of roads out there that were built on 90 cents per dollar in funding that are now coming due, and the funding isn't the same level as it was then. So I think that's another factor that we're kind of caught in. Dave?
Yeah, a couple of things. The Hagan Street road improvements, that's a big number for such a short street. Jim and I have talked, and this I think is something we maybe need to consider is narrowing that budget down and creating it a one-way. We really need it as an emergency entrance. I think the big thing for that road is to get kids for shortcut to school off higher traffic roads with a sidewalk. But for emergency entrance, to get that in for a secondary entrance, we could maybe narrow that down to a one-way street. I think sometimes we get caught up that, this road's bad and this road's great and there's roads in between. We can't have all the roads at 100% capacity. I mean, some roads are gonna have to be at different life cycles, and there's roads that are relatively new. There's been a lot of investment in this end of the township because there wasn't as much pavement. Now we need to invest on timely investments, which we're looking at 26 next year, which has been ground up this year, and 75. 11 is in the future, but some of these roads need a bit more level of gravel to create that support, and then the higher level of service investment from DC to get it into a thicker pavement for future road carrying capacity. But when we compare, and maybe we need to do more of that, is I traveled around Ontario into other municipalities, and I think our roads stand up pretty good on average, but we do have roads that is coming back to haunt us a bit. They put a lot of roads in the east end years ago, as Jim said, and that thinner layer did a great job, but it wasn't sustainable to go past much more than that 20-year period with even with the maintenance and so on. But right now, some roads need to get turned back to gravel because the maintenance is at a higher level requirement to keep them patched and so on. The paver has done, that paver that does that narrow paving has been helpful. I think, the roads department has implemented at higher traffic entrances, so anywhere there's a milk truck, we need to put that 1-foot paving strip there to protect the edge of our road. And I'm not just blaming the milk truck, there's lots of other entrances that have heavy trucks going in and out that need that. But these are just little things that need to be done because, I know the guys are out patching, and a week later there's another hole because the surface is so thin and vulnerable. But anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, Brian.
A couple things. First, the Holstein Pit expansion. Is that strictly the notion to buy some neighboring property, or is there an opportunity there to take the road out between us and the neighboring pit? Is that an option, or what part of that can you tell me?
That was a discussion we had with the landowner, and we did have Hydro come out and assess because the hydro poles would have to be moved. We could structure the extraction to happen that we could leave them in place and then do like half the extraction on the one side and then move them over, and they would stay on that side and be permanent. We wouldn't have to do a relocate twice. And that was estimated somewhere between 40 to I think it was 120,000 or whatever, on just a estimate number from Hydro. So that was looked at and discussed with the owner. It kind of fell off the table a little bit at that point. So again, initially it was looked at as a purchase, but then there was discussion about wanting to retain ownership after, and we can't commit to that. If we own something, we have to put it up for public sale. We just can't say, here you go back again. So we can't structure it that way. Maybe a different agreement could be structured that way, but not a purchase and a sale that way. So currently, we've been discussing about some sort of annual fee or a tonnage type fee is what it's been. We're supposed to have tried to get in there to do a couple test holes when the crop came off. The timing was our excavator burnt when we thought we were gonna kind of maybe be able to get in there, and talking with the owner about their excavator. This was now probably 6 weeks or so ago. It kind of got semi-lined up and then it's fallen off the radar a bit again, so.
Right.
So, again, not that number, that could maybe move another year, but we need to think about trying to secure something. And the study work that's involved, that's gonna take, you know, a number of dollars to satisfy those needs.
Right. And the other one was, as we talk about and consider turning some of the current paved roads back to gravel, is there an implication down the road to our fleet of maintainers? Because obviously the more gravel roads you have, the more maintenance it takes, or more maintenance time with the machines. So do we have enough capacity in our maintainer fleet to look after the additional gravel?
I believe so at this time, because it's gonna be a cycle, right? We're gonna be going back into, you know, another year to paving again and putting the plow trucks on. So I think, you know, this budget doesn't identify turning a whole bunch of roads back to gravel, other than what currently we've just done, and then trying to rehab, other than at this point in time, considering that those 2 blocks remain gravel for a little while yet. It has farm traffic, no doubt it has traffic, but it doesn't seem to have, you know, some of the shops located on it where we've got that extra truck traffic happening and those type of businesses happening. So I believe at this point, as far as expansion for expanding to another grader or whatever to service, I don't think we can jostle at this point in time, but.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Martin and Barb.
Morning, Jim. The 100 millimeter for the 2 projects there, considering what was put down 20 years ago, what's the longevity for the roads when we put the 100 mil on? Would it be 20? Would it be 30? Because you have to look at that million over time. So what do you think? How long would they last? With the maintenance, of course.
I would think you would get in the 20 horizon. Again, we know that those roads are seeing heavy truck traffic, and hopefully that pavement can take the wear and tear on it. Those are like a county type standard, you know. They're paving with 4 inches and that, so you know, if your base is good, if you got good base and you can get that application in 2 lifts down, it should have a longer lifespan. And again, 50 millimeter will last 20, 25 years as well, but again, our truck traffic has changed
For sure.
substantially.
And maybe just to add to that, county traffic is different than what we get. We're not gonna get their level of traffic. The other thing, with a thicker coat, you'll be able to bring that life cycle back up quickly with a, whether it's a
No, that's what I mean.
with a
It's a lot of
microsurface.
money. It's a lot of
Right.
money, but over
But-
20 years.
Right, but the
There's a lot of-
microsurfacing or the chip and tar coat over top of that will bring the life cycle back greater. So you likely get, instead of maybe a 4 or 5 year increase in life, you might get 10 out of that.
Okay.
And one more, with the
Yep.
with the double culverts, would you be paving that part over the culverts, or just keeping that gravel? what would be the best way to do that? Is that part of the budget for the double culvert?
Generally, today, we pave over top of culvert sections and bridge sections. Typically, that's what's done, so.
Okay, Burke.
Thank you, through, thanks, Jim. Yeah, it's a tough one, tough for you to develop as well. For the Hagan Street extension, I had actually written down here, you know, given the amount of traffic at the school, would making that a one-way, maybe you or Dave, would making that a one-way street, that portion help with traffic flow and, you know, parking issues and all of that other drop-off and pickup that they're experiencing at the Dundalk Proton School? And just as an addition, I'd had a conversation with someone at Flato, and they were looking or would look into a bridge, footpath over the conservation area if they could get agreement with Grand River Conservation, so that some of that, you know, that walking all the way around, and I don't know if that had ever, if anybody had approached.
So
Yeah.
I'll maybe take that, because it's more of a school and traffic or student flow. We tried that, and I mean, Flato, bless their heart, they can take another run at it, and maybe with Bill 23,
Yeah,
things will be easier these days, but they didn't want even a bridge over that. of
not
any
even a
kind.
footpath.
No, but anyway, maybe that'll change. We tried with low level and flood going over, and no, they wouldn't take it on. But this road would not be designed to take on that traffic flow as far as at the school time. And sorry we didn't get back to you, because I think everybody looked at one another and thought they were responding to your email about it. So I know there is there's some bylaw changes and so on to try and control down there. And I think that's now closer in place, the timings. And we're gonna be ticketing down there. We get complaints from the neighbors. I mean, you know, we couldn't get emergency services in there sometimes because it's so congested. And there's just, they need to find a different way. And the school, you know, is not gonna be there someday. It's obviously gonna be closed, you know, in 5 or 10 years, but that's not the short-term solution. So we're gonna be ticketing. There's nothing I can see in this design of Hagan Street that will provide parking on the side of the road to improve that. The idea of Hagan Street is just totally to get emergency services in if Rose Lane is ever blocked. And then to have, you know, pedestrian traffic that they can walk to school. And anyway, that's kind of the idea.
But we do know that people are gonna use it. It's,
Oh, for sure.
you build a road, whether,
But
this is
the-
just for emergency
for sure.
access, and people are still gonna use
But
it.
the idea is they could drive and go east on that road to get in, because that's the idea. If an ambulance needs to get in there, they can go down, a fire truck.
Right.
And, you know, if need be, and let's say Rose Lane was blocked, you know, we could have staff usher them out, you know, through the one-way, if that was the case. But I'm not sure, like, seems like a lot of money, $590,000, you know, when we need to, you know, look at investing in other places. But the only way legally to really create that is to have an open road lots of some kind. We looked at every angle to try and get an access in there. It can't be just emergency use only. It's either open or it's closed,
Exactly,
and dig it out. So we need to have it open.
okay.
Yeah.
And Jim, you mentioned something about ISIP with when you were speaking about the Victoria Street reconstruction. But, and you said there was something about 5 million in the ISIP, but we're talking about taking it all on as debt. There's no funding available for that Victoria Street reconstruct?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's in the water budget. The funding's for, well, the water component.
Okay,
So that's all the water
Pipes.
main replacement, hydrants, everything, services, all to do with that, the funding's for. Is plus the granular down below and some of that work, which, you know, is part of road work, but we're taking some of that funding for that, all that base that'll have to go in, because we have to go down that 2 meters for the water main. Mostly in the main part, the sanitary sewer is good. There is a component in the wastewater for the end of Victoria Street, halfway from Macaulay to Ida. There is no sanitary sewer. This will put sanitary sewer in there for the availability for when the trunks come down Ida Street, that we'll be able to connect, as well as that component for the Ida Street between Hanbury and Victoria. That would have sanitary as well put in. Again, they are in their respective budgets, not as part of the road, but that funding, and council's seen that funding that we were awarded back mid last year or so, but that is tied into the water budget, so.
Maybe I'll add to that it's really important that we do one mobilization and get this done right, because we got caught up, you see Ida Street now, we built the road, did a great job, and we come along later and put water down. And it just kind of messes it up.
Well,
So we need to get, I think, $1 invested now will likely save $2 on some parts of the reconstruction later.
And just one more, Mayor Woodbury, is 2.5% for 10 years realistic given the current interest rates? Or is that something that municipalities benefit from?
Actually, that is a mistake. That should have been updated. That was from carryover from last year's budget. In my debt calculations, I've used 5%. I just needed to update that note.
The note is wrong.
The note, yeah, the comment says 2.5, it should say 5%. And I think that's being optimistic at 5%.
Yeah.
Okay, Jason, you had something?
Yeah, Jim actually answered a couple of them there from Barb. As far as the pit, where are we at on the license for sure? We've been talking with it for a long time, so just.
We're still in negotiation with with SON over it, and we have been sent some information for how they would proceed. And again, those are discussions that will have to take place in closed session. So.
Okay.
So I just wondered, we talked about, I know it's only 40 grand or something, but the rehabilitation, or the fencing and stuff, there's not much sense in doing that till we have it's gonna be another 3 years. I know it's only 40 grand, I just mean.
Yeah. That's it. That's why it's been put off, because we haven't had the license issued, so we haven't built the road. We're using the laneway that's going in, but then we gotta veer off before the house and barn towards the extraction area and build that road in, and then fence the licensed area off. And not necessarily all the tree planting at once, but maybe some trees for around that fence area to block kind of the view of the start of the extraction, so.
Maybe I'll add to that. Just recently, we got something from SON, and again, we'll talk about it in closed session. If we wanted to extract next year, we likely could, but it's a matter of paying the piper. So that's a decision the new council's gonna have to make. It's, and is it, the other thing that is concerning, is it gonna be a precedent-setting situation? So we got our consultant has some investigation into that.
Yeah, there's a lot bundled in. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Please, Jason.
I had one more just
Yep,
on the
sure.
the door replacement at Holstein. I understand we have to do that. Now Liam said with the sale of the tree, the property, the harvest of the trees, it's got to go into general. Like, so could something like that? Can we change that? Like we're talking about replacing the doors to be more environmentally friendly, but we're going to cut down trees, which that's fine. But couldn't we take that 100,000 to replace the door rather than just general stuff like that? Like just.
You can shift the funds between operating and capital, yeah, it's just that the trees is an operating activity and the doors are a capital activity. So you can, if you contribute the funds to reserves and operating and then use the reserves and road in capital, then you could do that way.
I just wondered how we could do that.
Yep. Okay.
Well,
So, yep, go ahead.
just an aside, we did a tender opening for the Saugus Valley Forestry for a recent harvest, and one bid came in at 40 cents instead of 60 cents for the board feet. So, and that was for a combination of sawmill and firewood. But it also factored in that there was a cleanup part of that aspect, like 2,000 trees that have no value. They'd just be felled. So it'd be interesting to get an inventory of how much is there.
Mhm.
Was there any feedback as to why one bid? Is there just nobody interested? Is it labor? Is it?
Yeah, it just depends on availability. This is a Bester Forest Products was awarded it. They were the only ones who bid this time around, and I guess it depends on capacity as well.
I have a contact in.
And they may not even do it for 4 years.
Yeah, oh, really? Wow. But anyway, I have a contact up in the Desboro area that has a sawmill, and I said, well, would you be interested? And so I think a bit of research might, like he has a cutter that would cut for him, and so we could.
It would have to go out to tender for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But get the tenders in the right hands to
Yeah.
get the bidding. Like it seems there's a lot of work, but there's a lot of revenue available in that kind of, especially with the price of lumber.
Well, and what our forestry manager has noticed, the bid prices are not keeping in tune with what we're paying at the retail store. Like the price has escalated far more, and the bid price to take it should be coming up as well. But they're not getting in and doing it in a timely fashion. Maybe it was COVID related, and maybe that'll start to pick up some more. I'm not sure.
I think we're gonna hear COVID related for a very
Oh, I
long time,
know.
whether it is or
I
not.
know.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, just, the wood lots that we're looking at, these would be hardwood, not softwood plantations, so, that price I'm hearing, it sounds more like softwood to me, but, maybe I'm.
It was sawmill, so, yeah, but you're right.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see what they come in at.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more comments. Brian, would you like to, since we might as well go to almost Mayor Milne here and
Well,
see what direction you'd like to lead in. This is
I
fun.
guess the only comment I would make beyond what I've already said is, I think all of us heard us on the campaign trail that the roads is a priority. So, I mean, this is obviously early days, but first kick at the cat, so to speak. I think we have to look pretty hard at these numbers, but recognizing that, the electorate spoke and they'd like to see some action on these roads. And, even from the asset manager, or the asset analyst, I guess it is, whatever your title is there, Cash, but you've made it clear that, we can't go on putting this stuff off. We have to invest in the infrastructure, so I'll just leave it at that for now. I mean, obviously, there's a lot more to the budget than just the roads, but it is a big ticket item, no doubt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So thanks, Jim, and I guess we can move on to the fire now. Hi, Derek.
How are you guys?
Good. Hey, I was just gonna look, it's another 6 minutes and your radio show comes on.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Don't worry, you can listen to it tomorrow night, so.
okay.
2023, I think it's pretty straightforward. We're looking at bunker gear. We have to do that every year to keep up the inventory. Fire hose burst, it breaks, so we have to keep that inventory up. Same with the SCBA air bottles. They're good for 15 years total, and then we have to retire them. The biggest one would be the new tanker truck to replace the rescue. I brought this into the capital budget, I think 2 years ago now. I slated it for 2023. The issue is prior budgets never had anything to replace the rescue. As everyone or most people know, frontline apparatuses are good for 15 years, so it's already technically expired. It's 2004. And the thought of switching it to a tanker is you're only buying one truck versus buying two. Because the tanker will be 14 years old next year. So if we switch from a 3-truck cycle, when I talk about that, I'm talking about pumper, tanker, rescue, to just pumpers and tankers. The next truck we'll have to purchase, other than the ladder, we're not even looking at that right now. To keep up with our infrastructure will be 2034. So our tanker that we currently run will still be able to be used for 25 years. It will go to reserve. The new tanker will be able to run for 15, and then that one will go to reserve. So essentially you're buying one truck instead of two. And then the next one is the half-ton truck. We've talked about it, whether an SUV would work or not. Our partner up in Grey Highlands is getting out of the SUV, found there wasn't enough room, as well as when you're in a rural department, your fire chief is still very active out on the scene. After the call, you don't want to be putting your gear in the trunk, because now you're contaminating the whole vehicle. So when we're looking at the pickup truck, we'd be looking at some sort of EcoBoost or a little bit more environmentally friendly than the 6-liter that's out in the parking lot. But everything has gone up through the roof because of COVID, so the prices are massive. We haven't put anything in really for reserve, we just put it on the budget here, get your sort of thoughts. We can obviously look into the reserves and tap some money out of there. Melanchthon really won't be contributing any more to a reserve because of our new fire protection agreement that we did. It was a flat rate fee. It's what it is. There's not a certain amount sent to reserves. So that's going to be sort of obsolete, so we could kind of dip into that. Yeah, there's one thing that is missing though from here is pagers. We're looking at $4,000 and getting some new pagers. One pager is $580. With development and the need for more firefighters, that's where we need more pagers for them. Call volume has increased. We are 27% increase from last year in call volume currently right now. So that's 2023. Questions?
Can I make a comment? The fire doesn't have any reserves after 2022 because they were wiped out to fund the rescue pumper tanker in 2022.
So there we go.
So that's the funding challenge with fire. The reserves have been wiped out.
Well, you're restricted by legislation with ages and things like that of vehicles, and I've always said it was a awkward thing to do with picking that 15 years with fire service, because the vehicles are maintained at a different level than most other vehicles out there, and it, you know, having an older one that's well maintained with less hours and miles on it were some of the better trucks, I think, and things like that. But we are restricted to those time limits, and not getting anything or much for getting rid of the vehicles once, like as far as selling them off afterwards. So yeah, all necessary stuff. Brian.
Thank you, John. Derek, I'm wondering, or Chief Malnick, I'm wondering, the new tanker truck, what's the delivery estimated time? Like, probably we wouldn't get it next year, would we?
No, so we can set it up too that you don't have to pay until delivery. Right now, if you're doing a custom build, you're 2 to 3 years out now. It's a huge backlog for trucks.
Right.
So it's just getting it on the budget, being able to release the tender, get that going. Yeah.
So if I might, Mr. Mayor,
You might.
when you say custom build, that's something that's long mystified me. We've been building fire trucks for I don't know how many years. Why does every truck has to be a custom build? Is there not a sort of a standard tanker truck that you can buy off the shelf?
So there is, when it comes to what we're talking about this tanker, is we need spots for people to move our firefighters to the scene. So custom tanker is a 2-door. So essentially what we're looking at is a 4-door for this one. There's a lot of them out there, but the industry just likes creating the 2-door, getting them out as quick as possible. We already have a 2-door. The rescue currently seats 8. So if we switch that with a 2, now 6 seats are missing. So we're looking at doing the 4-door. and then being able to sort of set the trucks as almost sort of like teams. So our frontline pumper right now carries 5 people, and so then the new tanker will sort of go with that one, and then the engine, the one that we just bought, has 6, and the tanker with 2 will go. So you're trying to even out the numbers as much as possible when we get co-occurrences, which are happening a lot.
Right.
So
Final question.
I doubt it.
Well, for me anyway. So the 600,000 is the estimate for the entire truck, correct?
that's the entire truck right now.
Right.
I don't know. They won't give prices and what they're doing in the industry right now. Is here's your quote, 30 days. After that, you take on the extra cost,
Sure.
whatever they.
Sure. So I guess my thought was, if the tanker isn't gonna be delivered for, say, 2 years, we could knock the 600 back to 300 in the 200, or the 2023, put 300 into reserves, and then another 300 in 24 to pay the truck,
We
right?
can do that. We can separate it based off chassis delivery and pay first, and then later there's
Right.
multiple options that we can do.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And the other part, to answer your question about the kind of off-the-shelf trucks, is one thing you'll know in the fire service, with it being standardized, is it isn't. And every chief thinks that things should go a certain way, and that's why the fire trucks, for the most part, you don't buy, it has to be custom, because they can't build a truck that satisfies everybody. So it's kind of same thing as fire helmets and everything else. They're all a standard color, but no, they're not. So go from there. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I had a similar question on the tanker truck. If, again, we order it, we go out to tender, we get a quote, but it's not delivered till 2024 or 2025, do they honor the price that they gave? Or by 2025, it could be greater or less?
So with the way the market is right now, it's either greater or less. They will not give you, and that's what the hardest part of the fire service right now, every chief is talking about it. How do you sell a truck to a council? We don't know the price.
Yeah,
We don't know, but that's everywhere right now.
okay. Wow. And as to Brian's point, come 2 years, we should have rebuilt some reserves up. Right, Liam?
If council.
If Bill 23 doesn't go through.
Don't put it in, it's not there.
Yeah.
Well, no, I understand, but we will be collecting, hopefully, DCs for a little while.
So the DCs won't really affect this because it's replacing something. The DCs is,
Right.
we're talking about the ladder
Right.
truck as DC funding whenever that's available.
Right,
This is
because it's
replacing a
future
fleet.
for growth, right?
But we're not talking about a ladder truck.
No, we're not.
Not
yet.
today, we're not.
Not today.
2025, huh? There you
But
go. Yep.
DC, if you're creating more cab space, you could put that in for growth.
Technically, we're reducing it from 8 to 5, right? Because a tanker truck, you'll never get 8 people in it.
Okay, sorry, you had 8, you had 5.
Yeah, you did say 8.
The
I
current
thought-
truck right now is 8.
Mhm.
A tanker truck with the 4-door, you'll get 5.
So what's the one you're taking offline?
The rescue, which is 8. We don't need a heavy
gotcha.
rescue.
Now you're
Okay, all right.
So we'll reverse DC it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So why won't a DC, like, our calls are up 20-some%, probably because of development, not just
Yeah,
development.
but
So why
for a
won't,
DC, you gotta be able to carry more people, more water, more pressure, more something. If you're just replacing like for like the rescue van doesn't carry water.
No, so if that's an option that we can do for water and try that one, absolutely, we can try it with the DC.
So what are you gonna show up to the fire with? Instead of the rescue van, you're showing up with this thing. And is it going to be there as well as 2 other trucks that you normally show up with? No.
So right now, the way it happens in the rural, you get a fire, a majority of our fires are in the rural.
Yeah.
We send our pumper, we send our tanker, we have our new truck that comes. The rescue comes and it sits on the side of the road, it's useless.
Right.
It brings people. Where if we bring more water, that's more initial water to put on the fire, you have a better chance of knocking that fire down, and you're not relying on neighboring municipalities as much.
Yeah.
Or
So
if we
what,
get
how
two
much,
fires.
how much more water is showing up at the site with then?
So the
with new one
tanker,
versus now?
what
So,
we'd be looking at would be an extra 2,000 gallons of water.
and what would you show up right now with?
Now you're making me do math.
Well, just,
Less than that.
but you
Yeah.
can likely justify 25% of the truck cost.
We'd be at almost 4,000 gallons currently, so we'd be bringing an extra 2 on top of that.
50%.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you could justify, but anyway, it's something that should be discussed with the
Mhm.
next DC, which I
Yeah.
think needs to be, I think we need to think about, with the growth and all that.
Yeah.
In the next year, or a year and a half, 2 years,
Yeah.
open that up again,
Yeah, okay. The,
especially with Bill 23.
yeah, the issue you run into with the new growth as well is usually the new areas are the quieter for calls. You don't get the fires in there
Yes.
because you got all this stuff and things like that. So I know with us down there, till a neighborhood was 20 years old, we weren't in there a lot. It was medicals and small things. You didn't get any much in the way of structure fires and things like that. So, Jason.
Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that, but I mean, the Mennonite community, that's new development too. So
Yep,
I just
absolutely.
I understand what
Yep.
you're saying, but
Yep.
I thought maybe we could tie it in somehow.
And hopefully we can.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Good point. Okay. Any other questions or comments for Derek? Okay. Not seeing any. We've been over an hour here, so let's take the real reason is my cup's empty and I don't have any coffee in it right now, but let's take a 10-minute break and then we'll come back to this. So, 10 minutes, whenever that is. Okay. So, where are we off to next, Liam?
Well, those were the two departments that had the largest funding pressures, so figured with me to go down the department, just a quick summary as to what that department is planning.
Sounds great.
So the first one in the group is the finance department. So basically planning a computer replacement each year for the 6 staff members. And then our folder inserter is causing us major issues. It's about 9 years old, but they cost about $20,000. So what is a folder inserter? Folder inserter folds the tax bill and stuffs it in the envelope. So I'm proposing that we actually do a capital lease of that rather than, right now we own the folder inserter, but it's been causing us problems over the years. Whereas if we actually have a lease of it for roughly the same price for $20,000, then it makes it an operating cost going forward, and then they fix it whenever there's any issues, because we've had issues with the current one. And so that was the efficiency in the finance department that I was requesting.
Okay.
And that's the summary for the finance section.
Any questions, Barb?
So, small amount, but in the grand scheme of things, what about the modernization fund? Would that, a new folder inserter be classified under the modernization fund? And, I mean, that's operating, is that more operating and,
Modernization fund is more for operating efficiencies, so
Okay.
council has argued that he's the modernization for some other capital projects, so I don't think the province will ever come down and say no, but it's not in my opinion, it's not what it was intended for.
right?
But it is efficiency in the sense that the staff time involved doing the stuffing when that current stuffer fails makes it more efficient by getting a better stuffer, so.
Okay.
But
Not
we already
seeing,
leased photocopiers and the postage machine, so I'm not sure why we're not doing the same thing with the folder inserter.
Right. Well, and, I mean, it's not a bottomless pit, the fund, so.
Yeah.
yep. Okay,
So I just wanted to highlight that because it's not really capital expenditure, but it's gonna increase operating costs annually going forward.
yep. Okay, good. I don't see anything else on that. Yep.
And clerks.
Through the mayor, so I just have for clerks an additional laptop, and then in future years, just replacements for laptops, that's all I have.
Well, that's pretty boring. Any questions for Lindsay? Okay,
Council, let me scroll down. Just replacement laptops into reserves for future years for council. The new council term in 2022, we previously budgeted for 5 laptops rather than the iPads. We found the iPads weren't sufficient. I think everyone could agree, so we're moving to a laptop similar to this. So those were budgeted, those have been purchased, so then just in the future for replacement.
just bring your chargers with you, because what I found with the laptop is it doesn't last a meeting. Where the iPad's did, the laptop lasts about half a meeting. So, yeah, just word of advice. Okay, not seeing anything on that.
Administration, do you want me to tackle it, or do you want to comment your carpeting, or?
I can comment if
Okay,
that's.
yeah.
Mhm.
So for the technologies, I've been in contact with our third-party provider, and they've confirmed that we actually don't need a replacement of our major services, like our servers and switches and that kind of thing in 2023. That's more for 2024, so we'll be lowering what's in here right now. We will have a couple of replacement laptops coming, one for the new CAO, and then possibly one other one that we think might die in the next year. As far as the carpeting goes, this was brought up originally as a health and safety issue. The carpeting's getting old and torn and wrinkled, so people are tripping on it. We did look at it to see if we could kind of cut it and fix it, but we can't. It's getting too old, it's getting too thin. So that was a quote that we received from somebody. We got pricing, and that's what it came in at to replace from the front office all the way back to the lunchroom.
Okay, Brian?
Just on that, would hard flooring not be more?
Sorry, that is the quote that we got, was
Oh.
for hard flooring.
Okay, yeah.
To replace the carpeting, I
Exactly.
guess is why it got.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask the same thing.
Same question.
Clean and all that stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, thank you.
Lauren.
I wasn't gonna ask. Just-
Same question,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah, any questions or comments? Yeah, I think the carpets are on their way out of any workplace. Okay, well,
Okay. There's no capital for public health, on to planning, and Clint doesn't know, but I just loaded a laptop every few years in the 10-year plan. I think he had one for 2023 for a new junior planner, but I added one for 2027 and 2030 as well, so.
Bargain.
yeah, good planning.
If we may not even need a planning department.
Well, you never know with Bill 23. I'll
Me-
be a development facilitator.
Okay, that
Yeah,
might be a good idea.
yeah, the laptop will do it. Any questions or comments about the planning one? Okay,
Building?
hi Bev.
Hello. Through the mayor, building pretty basic, I guess, when you come to capital, to replace vehicles. There should be some money in there for some laptops over a period of time. I'm not sure what, unfortunately, my computer is quit here today, so I guess I need a new computer. It won't even, thank you.
Good thing you got it in the budget.
Yes.
If there's in the budget. And I think the one to bring most attention to is there's I think it's a $400,000 piece in there for $500,000. See, this is even too small for me.
That's-
500,000.
2024.
Oh, that's 2024.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll shut my mouth. Sorry, so that's about it for the building, is replacement of vehicles and computers. I will mention in there that at the time I did this, there was no bylaw section, so we have a replacement vehicle for bylaw in building that will get transferred over to bylaw.
Okay. Barb?
So under building, though, that isn't, that comes out of the building,
Out of the building except for bylaw.
development pays for development. It's not part of our capital, I mean,
Not
It
raised
is,
through
it's not
tax.
part of taxation, that's the word I was looking
Funded by
for.
the building permit fees.
Right.
rather than taxation.
Right, thank you. And the basic camera for the drone, are you actually using the drone now?
I think the fire department's using the drone much more than I am.
We used
It's-
it last night and a couple calls recently, we used it. Yeah.
It's keeping our firefighters, you able to assess the structure better?
Yeah, it allows us to see where the hot spots are in the structure. It also will help with remote rescue, so that's what the people were practicing last night. So if a snowmobile goes off, send a drone, you'll pick up their thermal imaging, and we know better where to go.
Okay.
So that basic camera I'm interested in is because of previous situations. I've decided that the building department only requires that infrared camera on certain occasions, and rather than taking a chance of crashing or losing that camera, we would buy a much cheaper, just an imaging camera. And when we're doing our reconnaissance of BWAPs, building without permits, or bylaw, that's the camera we would switch over, so we have that more expensive camera sitting in the case, safe, to be used more for the fire department than for imaging when we want to do a hotspot on a single-family dwelling or a commercial
Okay.
dwelling.
Thank you.
Jason?
So this car you got in here, that's gonna be transferred to bylaw, or no, this is another one?
I believe that's to replace my EV car that I'm driving right now, which is, I will admit, I believe our bylaw says every 7 years for replacement of a vehicle. That's only 5 years. So it is coming to the end of its 5-year warranty period. And I believe it's the one I should be replacing because it's not four-wheel drive. It doesn't have the height quite as well. It's a good vehicle for town. But it's not a great vehicle for out in the community and the agriculture. So to disperse the vehicles so that I'm not replacing 2 every 5 or 7 years, I'm starting to get them spread apart. Because again, this year I bought 2. I would like to try to spread it that I'm only having to buy 1 every 2 to 3 years instead of 2 every year.
To Jason's question, what will happen to your existing car? Will it be sold? Will it be transferred to an in-town bylaw?
GovDot, or it'll be sold. It may be a trade-in value. I do not know. That car is no longer made, so I don't know what that'll do
Okay.
to the cost of it or the desire to own.
It's not intended to keep it in the fleet.
No, I do not believe it's reasonable to keep it in the fleet unless council wants to purchase it for driving to.
Conferences.
I'd be happy to sell it to council.
I mean, the options are open for the future.
Yeah.
It's, who knows what the needs will be in 2 or 3 years or whatever.
Yep. Yep, okay. Any other questions or comments for Bev? Okay, not seeing any, thank you.
Yeah, so just want to clarify, the property standards tab that you're seeing in here doesn't show any capital on it because we just created it at the 11th hour before we went to publish, so it hasn't had to load the future plans, but I don't believe there's any plan intended for 2023 for
There
property
wouldn't be.
standards.
Well,
Because we just bought,
shouldn't say that. I am looking at a small amount of about $1,000 to purchase 4 strobe lights or active lights to put on the top of the vehicle, so when we're pulled over on the side of the road, we can activate them just to give a little bit more safety.
Okay.
Okay. Next section is industrial land. Is Dave tackling industrial land, or?
Dave, just speak up for the recorder, you're just a bit quiet.
Yeah.
Try. I may not have the updated one here. So industrial land for 2023, we've got the construction of the bypass road, kind of phase one of that, and we're looking at 1.7869 million. And that would be funded from revenues from previous sales and future sales, which will be closing in the new year. And then the next one is the industrial access road. We'll put a sewage pumping station in there, and that will be collecting DCs for that, because that pumping station will impact future Highway 10 and Melanchthon side of the road development. It'll be kind of where everything flows gravity-wise to, it gets pumped uphill to the plant. And then in future years, just the debt servicing for some of that as we collect the DCs.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Martin?
Okay, with the 1786, you said first phase, what is included in
Well,
the first phase? Is that, are all the consultations done? Is this actually?
Yeah, the consultation's done, that would be hard.
Hard to
service.
put in the
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
But to that point, the funds are already in reserves for that.
Either in reserves or they will be collected through the cost sharing agreement that we have and the cost of the sale revenue coming in from a phase 2 project,
Okay, thank you.
Eco Park Lands.
Mm-hmm. Jason?
So when will we be completed this? project?
2024.
24. Oh, that's phase, yes. right.
Yep. Okay. Not seeing any more.
Okay.
Yep.
So the next section is economic development, which doesn't look like any capital loaded, so I would say that the annual replacement of the laptop every few years should be on this schedule, so I'll make that update for the next version.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments on economic development?
No, there's, I mean, a lot of the stuff that's going on in economic development right now from a capital standpoint is through that RTO7 project. You know, we're working at going to the upper limit of that spending level. And the latest is that we're going to acquire a visitor information booth that we plan on putting out on Highway 10 somewhere. The plan would be close to that MTO Park and maybe the McDonald's project. But that would be something hopefully we get going in 23 or 24.
Okay.
So is that a capital item that needs to be added in?
No.
Just a capital note? Okay.
That'll be through the RTO7 funding.
Okay.
And we already talked about fire. So on recreation.
Morning, Kevin.
Good day. So what we have in there is mostly the DCs that we're collecting for. Added in is do some work on the McIntyre building, accessibility, $10,000, but that will be through reserve funds. We have that special reserve from the McIntyre family. We haven't used it for the last couple of years. Sports field developments in there and DC charges. That 450,000 is in there because that's what's in the DC. I don't expect to spend that all next year. That can be spread over probably 10 years or so. But there's an opportunity to start the soccer fields on the Ag Society land because they're trying to get some fill from Flateau over to make mound bleachers instead of the bleachers. So if they're hauling some soil over, we can maybe piggyback some of that work to help develop those soccer fields. So that's why that's in there. But that 450,000 will likely be spread over, I think in DCs, we have over 10 years for that, don't we?
I'd have to check, but we can massage which year that gets presented
So, and then this is the year to replace the trailer, so if we move to a dump trailer, which is more valuable to the department, some of it can be covered under DC charges, but if we move to a dump trailer, then we got to upgrade to a larger pickup truck, so we're looking at getting a 3/4 ton used pickup truck. Hopefully we can get on a cycle of the larger truck, perhaps with the fire department. Fire department upgrades their truck, maybe we can go on that cycle because they have low mileage and we have low mileage. And that's what we're looking at for this year, or next year.
Okay. Barbara?
The sport field development, Kevin, is that just at the ag lands, or where are we with the Norm Jack dedicated park?
And so Norm Jack, Plateau is pretty much building those for us.
Okay.
So they've already started on the soccer fields. Clint and I have been back and forth with them on a few changes. They're not giving us any parking is the issue right now, but most of that, those 2 soccer fields are developed. Plateau is doing those for us.
So to that point, they're not giving any they're not assigning any area for parking. Where will all of the families that have to use the soccer fields in the park?
And that's Clint's reading that figured.
I mean, this is our park that we're gonna be assuming and maintaining going forward. It should be a park that we want.
So they can't pave close to the drain.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no reason why we can't put it in stone dust or grass parking to increase the parking. So that's how we're trying to get around it, is create secondary parking.
Well, because otherwise we're just gonna have a parking bylaw nightmare. And, I mean, this is our park that we have to assume. It should be built to how we want it, so.
Well, we're handcuffed though.
You're handcuffed by the physical,
Because of the drain. Like, we can't encroach on the drain with anything, so
Okay.
there is no location for parking. That's the problem. We either lose that park and change our plans drastically, or create some sort of secondary parking on the grasslands that we can.
you're working on it.
There will be some street parking frontage that isn't in front of houses, but there'll have to be something.
What they offer us is 15 spots.
Yeah.
So, and that's, no. So we're,
Can we lose a field? Like because this is 2 soccer fields, so you go down to 1?
That might end up being what happens, we're still in that.
You're still in the negotiation stage, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Martin?
Kevin, I was gonna ask that, what size of soccer fields are you doing? Because when we were at the ag, we could use the big nets, and then we use the same place for the smaller nets too. So you can, as we just said, we can combine, maybe lose a field. Were you thinking of just doing mini?
the 2 in Plateau were in the Norm Jack
Yeah,
Park were 2 minis.
Okay,
That
2
would
minis.
kind of work for the community plus locals. What we're planning in the Ag Society, but depending on growth, and this is more maybe for next, but as we grow, when we touch 18,000 people in town, I need 8 soccer fields. Where am I getting 8 soccer fields now? We have no property. So we're trying to get pieces here, pieces there. If we go down to 1 soccer field in Norm Jack, I might as well lose both of them. Because we're gonna go in there and cut all that grass, we might as well get back to Plateau and say, hey, put 10 more houses in here and let's go somewhere else. It's little Band-Aid fixes we got because we've got a developer from Markham who's used to building in Markham, where Markham already has the brand new arena, Markham already has all the soccer fields, Markham has all that. He's building in rural Ontario where 1 baseball field is. And how do we convince him that we don't have the services that are required for the people coming in. So we're trying to piece with the Ag Society. If the Ag Society ever leaves that property, we have zero property. So we're trying to do the best we can for what the future is going to be. But yeah, we're putting pieces where we shouldn't be putting them. Those soccer fields aren't big enough, we have no parking, they probably shouldn't be there. But we're trying to fit what the community's gonna need in the future, when we have absolutely no land for recreation in the future.
Clint, and then Jason
I
has
just
something.
wanted to add a little bit to that. We may actually have to start looking at some other, I'll call them strategic partnerships with things like the school board, where their properties may already have a soccer field on them as part of their school grounds, that we may enter into a partnership to use that field for a set period of time or what have you. So we may have to start getting creative like that. We've noted that it loud and clear to the province that we need more school areas in Southgate, Dundalk in particular, and we're going to be making sure that we make that space available in subdivisions going forward, and maybe there's an opportunity there to also do some sort of arrangement with the school board.
Well, it's all coming out of one taxpayer's pocket, so I think we should be doing up on that.
Share it.
I'm gonna jump on that because I've talked to Rob Cummings about this kind of thing. And I think they kind of go, their eyes glaze over, but I think you need to, at future delegations with ministers and so on, talk about these things. That's the, John, just like you, the mayor said, that is the public's property. It's not the school board's property. They own it eventually, but we need those soccer fields. We need the access to those gymnasiums, and we need access to the libraries in the future to do this whole thing, because it's stupid to have 2 libraries in Dundalk in my mind, or 3 maybe if we've got them like Broughton and, but anyway, here we are.
Yep. Okay, you had a follow-up.
I
and
did.
then Jason.
So 2 parks and fields and the MZOs, and there's marginal land that in 1 or 2 of those MZOs and I should know the answer being on conservation, but depending on how marginal the land is, as long as it's not wetland, can fields be put in place in those structures as long as it's not, buildings? Baseball diamonds, soccer pitches.
If it was me, yes. The downside to that is in the spring and whatnot, you don't get to start your soccer season until
That's true.
it dries out.
Right.
So that's.
But it could be it could be the buffer zone of the regulated area, like where you have to set back 30 meters. They're talking about reducing from 120 meter setback from a provincially significant wetland to 30 meters.
And then all of this is kind of thrown out the window with
Bill 23.
Bill 23.
I know.
And Bill 23 maybe helps with conservation, putting lands into recreation, but then when you go to the Bill 23 parkland dedication, it's upside down again. I mean, they're talking 5% instead of 10%, and it's just, so there's a lot of, we're having a meeting in Owen Sound with CEOs and planners on Friday to try and figure this thing out. There's a report that you may want to get your hands on that's going to county council shortly on Bill 23. There's a lot of information coming out just to understand and comprehend this. It's really turned things upside down a bit, but we still need to get our parkland dedication in future as land for the support recreation as we go forward, for sure.
Yep. Jason.
Well, to me, this, Flato's handcuffing us. Shouldn't we be handcuffing him? Or them, sorry. I don't understand, we need these parks, so maybe we build 4 or 5 extra, less houses there. I don't understand why he's telling us, or that company, what we should be doing. Why aren't we saying, no, this is gonna be parkland, you're gonna have 5 less houses? I just don't understand it. I don't know who can answer
Well,
that.
there's rules for that type of thing, and he has to dedicate parkland.
Yeah,
And there's percentages or values that he has to dedicate, so he either gives us money, and that's prescribed, and he gives us amount of land, and that's somewhat prescribed as well. They've given us, there's lots of land when it comes to the prescription of what he has to do. It's just we need to make it fit our needs right now.
but it sounds
To
like we're fitting his
require
needs
more.
for it to be.
To require more, we're going outside the rules. But
Well, this,
A bit of that too, when I say handcuff, is the fact that you're building one subdivision here, and then another subdivision here, and another subdivision there. We're getting parkland, but you're gonna have a soccer field in this piece of town, we're gonna have a ball diamond over here, and we're gonna have something over here. So that requires then 3 pickup trucks, 4 lawnmowers, like.
well, that's what I'm saying, like, when we tell him,
When
this is where
everyone
you
else
put
is building complexes for recreation, but
Yeah.
we can't, because he only has to give us 10%.
Yeah.
10% is not enough.
And 5% in the new deal in some
It's
cases.
not enough for complexes to put it all together. So that's the thing. Yeah, we're gonna get it eventually, but is it valuable to us having a soccer game on one side of town and then brother has to play on another soccer field the other end of town? And so it's just, you know, it's not ideal.
you're gonna get it, but where he wants it. Basically, what, let's put it out there,
What the
yeah.
government kind of says
Yeah.
he has to
Yeah.
give us is the problem, because we don't own any rec land that we can develop our own. And he's paying, we're getting DC charges, the 450,000, if we had our own property, we could put that full 450,000 into building beautiful soccer fields, lights and everything, but we don't have any property to do that.
And I think part of the problem too with it is the parkland was dedicated years ago with that subdivision agreement. And then when the stuff was happening with Norm and he was retiring and was off sick, that's when Flato said that they put in the soccer field, so it wasn't planned for, like the park area there wasn't originally planned for soccer fields. That was an add-on after it had been dedicated, which again is still an issue, but it wasn't planned that way to start with, and so, yep, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
just don't see why, if it's not gonna work, why you put 2 soccer fields in, there's no parking. To me, it sounds crazy, but anyway,
Well, we're gonna have to create the parking. I mean, there's the MTO spot there that, like, you'll get some overflow too, right beside it. But, we need to create some on-site parking to make it work, or they're gonna have to change their plans some degree. There is a concept, like, I mean, and maybe council will have to rationalize this, from the planning perspective, but, we've always tried to have parkland close to a group of homes. So, I mean, there's about 450, 500 homes there. They want parkland close as residents. Or do we say in the future, we want parkland in lieu funds, and we go buy 50 or 100 acres and take that parkland in lieu money and go over and develop one localized area? But that's a decision that would have to be long-term planning. Right now, each development needs to have parkland in it of some kind.
Go ahead, Clint.
And just sort of add to the mix here, when they say parkland dedication, that's all it is. It is parkland. It's not recreation necessarily. So you're providing land to put a swing set. You're not providing it to put a soccer field or whatever. Because 5% of a 40 hectare is different than 5% of a 10 acre or 2 hectare development, right? So the amount of land you can require is different depending on the size of the parcel and the size of the development. So, but again, it all comes back to it's parkland, not recreation land necessarily. So that's where there's another disconnect, I guess, in the policy.
So if you look at going into the original Flato subdivision on Elm Street there, you've got that stormwater pond and all the
Walking trail.
the overgrown around it type of thing, that stuff, that's all part of the park land, I would assume. It would count.
Actually,
It's
no.
different.
that's
The stormwater, but-
We
Always
did, the
different.
stormwater ponds, we made sure, no, that's separate.
But what about the land around them, some of that?
Not.
Not much?
That
Okay,
one,
good.
actually, they did a bit of cash in lieu, if I'm not mistaken, for
Yeah.
that particular
Okay.
parcel.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have a lot of parkland with that. But then
Okay.
when you look at the other phases, they actually over contributed.
Yeah,
So it, like, because there's none in the Flato North, but then when you combine them with the Flato East, it has like twice as much as it would normally.
And what Clint, just to jump on what Clint said, they do not, like, they have a responsibility to provide the parkland. They don't have a responsibility to really develop it.
yeah,
So they are creating some of these soccer fields and working with us on parking because they want that for the community.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Martin?
Jumping on what Clinton said about, it is parkland, not recreation. Going back, growing up in England, you had all these row houses, but there was always what they called the commons. So you could walk there, the kids could kick the soccer ball around, they could play cricket, but there was nothing defined. The council at the time had to look after the grass, and they had trails, they had fountains, some of the parks were like Hyde Park or, Central Park. The idea was parkland, not recreation, so maybe that's one way we should start looking at it, because there is that difference. And your point saying who developed it, and you didn't have to,
Yeah.
you have to look what's better, having trees in the middle of a subdivision with walking trails and an area where people can go for picnics and stuff like that. And as you say, using that money to buy some land to build what we want, a multi-complex unit. For cricket, I would say.
Or both.
Or both. And
Brian?
Good point.
And then, Mark?
Just a thought that, I think we are forgetting that we are in rural Ontario. So is it wrong to think people might drive a small distance to get to the recreation facilities? We have ball diamonds at Hopeville, we have soccer and ball diamonds at Vermore, we have a beautiful park at Holstein. I know people coming out of the large urban centers think, like Martin said, we're just gonna walk down to the soccer field. Well, maybe that's not what's gonna happen in rural Ontario going forward. The soccer and the facilities like that are gonna be maybe outside of the urban centers, so that we have the space to develop what we want. Am I wrong to think that? Or is that unreasonable to think that people might have to travel a small distance to get to a recreation facility? We've invested in these facilities that I just listed. There's potential for more. Maybe that, I don't know, Kevin, is that?
Most municipalities have had to go outside their towns because they didn't have the land inside.
Right.
So Sega Beach has the concept, or the complex outside for soccer, and you drive by, it's full all the time.
Right.
So yes, they're gonna have to drive. It's just, again, we don't have any land on the outskirts to even do it.
Well, and I'm
So,
meaning
yes,
beyond the
your-
outskirts.
Your complexes, yes, need to be in one spot. Your rural parks, or on your school. Like Blue Water School Board is the only probably school board in Ontario that doesn't allow recreation and school together. Flusherton Minor Baseball, we have to do an agreement every year to play on that ball diamond we built behind the high school. And it's not easy. You get the wrong principal in there, we lose our ball diamond. The principal before was terrible for recreation. The new one's actually quite good. So any agreement with Blue Water, you may have it one year, you may not have it the next year because they are terrible. Here and everywhere down there, Kitchener right now is building all their rec facilities in with schools. So it all depends on what Blue Water does on those lands too. But yes, us piecing here isn't really what anyone else is doing. Everyone else is putting their soccer fields in the industrial parks or whatever land they own. And yeah, you drive out to play team sports. Your little local parks are, what Martin said, go have some fun. Brampton, they just put a soccer net up there and don't define any soccer fields. So, but yes, we're trying to help solve two problems with one fix. Is it the right idea? Probably not, but.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just before I go to Barb, maybe what we need to do is, or you need to do, is down the road, you know, maybe the full recreation arena, swimming pool, whatever, all of soccer fields, all needs to be Hopeville or somewhere, and that way all the recreation money's staying in Southgate instead of subsidizing, you know, Wellington North, because the other half needs to go somewhere and things like that. So maybe it's everybody travels to what's available in town. Barb?
To the, I mean, the point, Kevin, you mentioned some of these parks are, you know, buffers to industrial. You know, you've got the industrial where I used to play on a ball team. The annual tournament was in an industrial park where there were 3 diamonds and you could rotate, and you know, there were houses, but it was more of a buffer to the houses. And you know, maybe we need to be looking at our Proton landfill or the property next to the Dundalk transfer station, or you know, those, well, I know but I'm not saying that it's
Ski hill, maybe.
yeah, maybe a ski hill.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
Well, Centennial Park has a viable ski
Yes.
hill. It's called Garbage Hill.
Yeah.
Used to toboggan down it, and you know, and then they developed that parkland as soccer fields and baseball diamonds and walking trails, but they have annual ski lessons, and so I mean, someday maybe we can make it something out of that Proton landfill.
Thinking outside the box, you gotta do it.
Yeah, let's get creative and if, yeah.
You're still going to need a critical mass of these services, but maybe overflow can go to the Hopevilles and the Proton stations, or anyway, that's gotta be
Yep.
rationalized.
Okay. I'm not seeing any more on recreation right now, so thank you, Kevin, and good luck. Okay,
Lots of
Liam.
planning.
So next would be the library, so that they haven't really done the annual replacement of books and computers and furniture finishings, so I'm not sure if there's anybody else here that wants to make a comment on the library. I don't see Lacey, so.
She's sick.
Yeah, she's ill today.
Okay.
But there isn't really anything different in there, in the tenure that wasn't there last year.
Yeah.
No. We're prepared to take questions if there are any.
Doesn't look like it. Okay.
Okay. No, we already done roads, so I guess we're on to solid waste. Just one comment, I did make one change on Jim. We loaded the waste for the location in here. That's because we hadn't given them the special project budget yet, which that's where that is. So, and that's why it's zeroed out here, but it will show up as a special project
Okay.
In operating.
in operating.
Okay. Go ahead, Jim.
Other than that, there's a collection truck replacement. Trucks are getting tired. The old one, we're gonna have to rebuild the arm again. So, anyhow, they see a lot of miles. And the frustrating part is, and you see it with all fleet vehicles, is this truck, once we order it, it's likely 2 years before we see it. So we still gotta put 2 years of repair and maintenance into something that's already starting to give us some grief. So.
Yep. Not seeing any. Go ahead. And then Barb.
A
think Mike had brought it up a few years ago, like, when we were replacing these trucks. Have we ever looked into another company collecting, or is that something, I know we've talked about it once, or is it totally crazy idea? I remember, didn't you bring it up, Mike?
Outsourcing.
Outsourcing, that's the word.
Yeah, we bounced around some information before with council about that type of things. Again, we have to have a commitment with the contractor. They have to do the investments as well. You have to go long-term, basically. But currently, with the development, we're running 3 trucks on Wednesday mornings and Thursdays for basically Dundalk and the developments there. So we are getting a lot busier, and it's not slowing down, and there's no sign of it slowing down. So it's an ongoing thing, this thing.
So with saying that, that's, you just said because of development, how about DCs towards trucks?
Garbage is, or I shouldn't say garbage, waste is only for recyclables, and it is pretty tight on what you can get in there. They don't support landfill through DCs or composting, just recycling. And the other thing that's a little bit, I don't think now's the time for that conversation until we get settled out with this producer responsibility and see what they're gonna pay, because they should be paying more, or they may say, hey, we're gonna take a look at collection. And but that's a discussion that will flesh itself out. It will be really difficult to do collection more efficiently, I think, than we're doing it, because there just isn't the infrastructure out there for dual collection like we're doing. Sure, they'll go up and down the road for recycles and picking that up, but to get compost and waste. And so I think at the end of the day, we'll likely have to collect something, and maybe somebody else have to collect something to make it work. It's, I think we need to wait until this producer responsibility stuff gets flushed out.
That's gonna change what you can recycle too, isn't it? Along the road, because it's gonna be more standardized.
Yeah, a little bit, whether styrofoam's in or out and all that stuff. Yeah.
The other thing, I think it's worth checking, like as far as price for, like you say, contracting out. One of the things I'd caution is they went through that with the City of Etobicoke, and they saved money the first 5 years, and then it cost considerable more contracting out, but they couldn't afford to buy their trucks back at that point and everything else. So to get back into it wasn't an option anymore, and the cost of contracting it out was high, and the service wasn't as what it had been. So just cautions there. Barb?
No, the question was asked and answered, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on? Yep.
So just one thing here with fleet trucks here. We've had discussions internally, departments and that we are looking forward towards some other fuel sources, CNG or something. Again, that's going to take implementing infrastructure for fill areas or whatever, where the availability is to get the products. Again, electrical vehicles, we're going to see them developing more and more. So we are thinking towards those lines, and we do have a slot in down the road about some sort of technology for charging or CNG, but again, it'll depend on where the resources are and how we can get to them. And we're going to have to be there someday, and I think if we're in the collection business, I think you're going to see our collection trucks probably be the first to be tried out, as opposed to a plow truck or something, in my opinion.
Okay. Barb?
Do you have a question? Carts. They're currently the developer buys a cart for each home. Carts are assigned to each home. Are we recovering the cost of those carts, or is that, because I noticed you've got $58,000 for carts, but those are there's a fee for those now. They're not free to the resident.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so, the bylaw states that, the homeowner has to pay for them. A developer does pay and include them in their package. Another developer doesn't. It doesn't put the onus on the developer to purchase them. It is the homeowner, to participate in the program that the bylaw states. So we do have a couple different scenarios out there. It's not the same. But yes, Liam looks at these as being cash back in, but we are in a replacement stage too. You know, these carts have been around getting close to that 20-year mark. So we are seeing damage, and we're seeing damage done by our own truck on some of the carts as well, with, I say, the sloppy arms and some issues we've had. So we are replacing some damaged carts that is not necessarily reflected in how we're accounting for them as total sales.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, not seeing any more on this, so we can move on to the next one. Thanks, Jim.
Cemetery?
Still believe there's, again, just trying to carry on with our foundation repair program at this point in time. We are considering to bring in the operating budget, going back to a part-time caretaker to look after the cemetery, not full-time, but on that year-round as required type basis, but bring back into it the grass cutting to be done by that caretaker as well. So looking at the current mower we have, we think we can get another number of years out of it. It may move from that 2027 slot, but we are equipped to be able to handle grass cutting if we go forward that way for the future here.
Okay, Brian?
Just looking ahead there to 2028, I see the third columbarium's being proposed there. I presume that's flexible because we wouldn't go to a third columbarium until the first one is full. Because currently there is space in both the first and second one.
Correct, yeah.
Right, so is that the plan though, right?
Yeah, Lindsay.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Through you, there's not a lot left in the first one,
No,
but
I
that's
understand.
very limited, right, Holly? Yeah. And the second one's going pretty quickly.
So
Like,
there
we
is-
see more columbarium purchases than plots.
Absolutely. So I would think likely there was more of a chance of that columbarium being moved up rather than back, correct?
I would say, yeah.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. All right, not seeing any else. Thanks again, Jim.
Wastewater?
So again, in '23, we expect to have the EA finalized and be able to carry on with our selected provider for the technology upgrade and have that tendered and started in 2023. If you noticed in the department report, there is a public meeting planned for November 17th for that wastewater EA to finalize it off, public meeting. So, and then that'll be submitted to the ministry and then finalized for the tendering process to go out. And then the other two projects tie in again to the Victoria Street work. If we go in to tie in new water main and upgrade on Ida to Hanbury, we would set sanitary pipe in there as well while we were down doing a dig. So again, all those elevations would have to be set. They would be plugged till future connection to them, but give us, you know, the pipe in the ground and not be going back in to dig it up. So.
Okay. Barbara?
Again, this is not general taxation, this is user paid, correct?
Correct, yeah. Currently, if there is a funding opportunity that could arise that we could grab hold of, we certainly will look into it. But as far as the upgrades and that part of the technologies.
Okay. All right, we can carry on.
Next for the water.
So in 23 here, we'll be finishing off the water tower, again to be commissioned in August of 23 is the timeline. The schedule on work is going very well, so the weather's cooperating, so the commissioning could even be sooner, but anyways, that's where we're looking right now. We're going to have a Neptune collection for the water meter reading on that tower. So that is placed there, but we will also be looking, if we can't get the whole area, and we expect we can, that we may require another tower out on the outer limits at some point, but that'll be a future discussion. We've also proposed in here a water bulk station. We moved this up. We're getting lots of inquiries about, especially when the construction is street sweeping, about bulk water filling. We're looking into a station that would be a prepaid type unit or credit card system that you'd pull up to, possibly a seasonal unit only, so it wouldn't be winterized for year-round. But they do make those systems, but that's not necessarily what we're looking at. We're wondering if we could put it at the bottom of the water tower, but again, that would take a little bit of going through a ministry ECA approval process to allow that in that area. So these are just, again, some last thoughts to move this in there, just because of the work being done at the tower. We could maybe do it, tie in some piping before we get into paving, and also give us that opportunity for these requests for bulk water. Again, we get them too in this, spring about swimming pools. We're actually getting calls from neighboring areas, a motel looking that they have to bring water in, about is there availability to purchase water. So again, it's not necessarily something, eventually it'll be looking after itself and creating revenue, as opposed to anything that would come out of that would be paid for water. So and we did have it in a timeline. We just moved it up to see if it might coincide with this construction better. And then debt we're carrying for Well 5 and Main Street East. And again, another section here for Ida Street to increase that water main. Well, if we can do that work with the Victoria. And again, we don't know exactly how that's rolling out yet. It hasn't quite happened, whether we're going to start at the east end or we're going to start at the west end. So that might defer it another year or so in timing, because I don't expect the whole Victoria Street to be done in one season swoop. It's a lot of work to manage, and it's going to be a lot of congestion, as Main Street was. And so it's not like you're working in a new development and can bang in the pipe and everything and away you go. So. And then we're also talking about looking at bringing in a meeting in the next couple of weeks with the fire sprinkler service that's for the old Trim Trends building that we have in our pump house, and upgrading a more automated system there that would help with fire flow that we could use as well in our system at this point in time. And that meeting's occurring here, like I said, in a couple of weeks, but we are looking at maybe bringing that forward as a DC for more industrial commercial, type fire, to help firefighting flows, and that would be an amendment maybe possibly in the next year or something to bring into the DC to try and have that developed, because it's some of these new areas that we're developing in industrial commercial that are having an increase of what their needs are, and they should be paying for some of these upgrades. We're looking into that.
Super. Any other questions or comments? Brian?
Thank you, John. Jim, one of the other things I heard when I was knocking on doors was, why are my water rates so high? And without, I don't pay water rates, obviously, I'm out in the rural area, but one of the things I tried to explain to people was, a number of years ago, Southgate chose, at the time, to really go straight up with their rates and get them to the sustainable level so that we cover future expenses and wear and tear on the system. Are our water rates doing what they're supposed to do? Are they a little high for what we need, or are they a little low? I mean, where are we at with our rates?
Well, I think it was it 2020? We did the financial plan again that ties in with the water rates and established it, and there was a substantial decrease in the base charges.
Right.
That we are concerned about with some of those revenues. So going backwards somewhat, but we hear this quite often, and these are people that are moving to the area from the bigger centers. They can spread out those funds more through the area rated services, so it brings it down to more applicable type costing. But we see other little areas. I know, I'm not sure how it is for sure right now, the status of Chatsworth, but I know they were really struggling because of such a small user group to pay, and the needs to recoup that were fairly hefty on that community. So again, this will be reevaluated. We have to do a financial plan before the municipal drinking water license renewal again. So that'll be in the 2025 year mark. So I don't, that structure that we did for the rate study is over the next 6 years or so. So it is built out how those rates will go. Basically, I think there's a small, if I remember correctly, incremental volume charge that moves up, but it's recognized in that study that there was the growth to happen, and that was why that we could bring some of that rate down on the base rate. So there was a fairly significant reduction in what we saw for revenues, and maybe Liam or Dave would like to comment on that, because that was a concern.
Well, I'll just say that, yeah, we need to sit down and do an analysis of I know we passed it in 2020, those new rates, but our revenues have dropped lower than anticipated. So when we need to analyze whether or not that's lower volume, because we know the fixed rate fell, but then the volume rate was supposed to theoretically compensate for that, and it doesn't appear to have. So it could be just through low consumption. So we need to do the analysis to see if our rates are recovering enough money to fund the system for future replenishment.
I mean, the growth is good, but when they're in these new homes, they're more water efficient, so they use as much. So when we do the next study, it'll rightify itself. But the more growth you have, more people sharing that bill, and that's going to be good in the long run. But there's a few pains getting adjusted right now.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And just to add to that, I saw a comparison. It's probably a year, 2 years old now, and we were kind of in the middle of similar size places, like this customer base. So, yeah, we weren't as bad as some people thought. Barb?
That's exactly what I was going to mention. I remember seeing a report, could have been here, or maybe I read it at the county, but there was a cost comparison of rates, and I would imagine that was, I think it was 2021 that we saw that report. And we weren't that far off from our neighboring municipalities.
So the problem there is most of the people that make that inquiry or that comment are from Sutton.
Right,
Mhm.
they're
They
coming
came from
from,
Brampton.
where
Yes.
there's
There's hundreds
thousands
of
and thousands
thousands.
and thousands and
Exactly,
thousands of
exactly.
people paying the same
Yes,
distance,
yeah.
the same pipes in the ground as we have, which we don't have 100,000 people
Yeah.
recovering it.
Like I mentioned water efficiency. The water efficiency is a great thing when it comes to service capacity, but then it kind of gets thrown out the window when it comes to paying the bills.
Mhm.
But, so I think we'll have better history the next time around. I know even when it come out, we were afraid of the cut, that maybe it was too significant a cut, but anyway, it went ahead and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, okay. Jason?
Just wondering, Jim, with the bulk water station, what kind of money could you charge for water? Will it be a revenue thing down the road, or is it, like it's 50,000, I don't know. What's water go for? I have no
I
idea.
don't wanna say it'll be a drop in the bucket, but
It'll be a
You want
wash.
to say it.
It'll be a wash.
We currently do have a rate for water that way. I don't know it off the top of my head. I think it's like a $1.70 something cubic meter. So it's gonna take time, but with these the users and then wanting to come and use it, obviously it's gonna, eventually hopefully pay for itself, but it's not going to pay for itself overnight by any means, so.
Mhm. Barb?
So this bulk water is municipal water. It's municipally treated, it's drinkable, so $1.70 a cubic meter is a lot cheaper than buying a bottle of water. Like,
That's 1,000 bottles of water.
yeah,
Mhm.
so I think, yeah, you could probably charge a little bit more than $1.70.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it would be structured a little bit differently than our current pricing for that type of bulk water, just because of the capital, you gotta consider that capital and how
Mhm.
it would have to be structured a little different.
Okay. Not seeing any more. So we can move on. Thanks, Jim. So that would be the budgets. Okay. So we have the motion before you now already. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I got it right there. That we received the staff report, and that we recommend the council receive it as budget information, and was there any recommended direction at this point? I think kind of got bits as we went, okay? So unless there's more discussion, I'll call that question. All in favor? And that is carried. I need a motion to resolve back to council at 11:26. Jason and Brian, any discussion? All in favor? And that is carried. Motions resulting from the committee as a whole. It's that we receive the staff report and that direct staff to proceed with any administrative changes. Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Mover, seconder.
Oh, I need a mover and seconder. You're gonna want to be in favor first. Barb and Michael? Okay, now, all in favor? That is carried. Reports of municipal officers. Bev, you have one here. Yeah, one at a time though. Maybe two. I need a mover and seconder for the first one, which is the soil permit request. Jason and Michael? Okay. Tell us the story.
Very little to tell on this. This is for a property just on 109 sorry. Very little to say on this. It's for a property just west of 109 on County Road 9. The farmer in this location wishes to fill in a low spot in his property that is constantly wet during the spring season and make it more farmable. And we applied for this. I will say here, originally, there's a wet spot on the other side of the railroad track. The SBCA has not approved that yet, so in order to get him started and going, we've removed that from this application, and he will reapply at a later date if he gets the SBCA approval on that section.
Okay. Questions or comments? Barb?
Through you, Bev, so SVCA has commented favorably. I don't recall seeing anything about the fill that you're saying you've separated the SVCA portion out, but this does not require SVCA comment?
This is not in the SBCA area, it did not require a comment.
Okay, all right. And the fill has passed, it's coming from somewhere, it's passed all of the tests.
It has passed tests, and it will pass more tests. This has been in the process since, I believe, April. So some of the sites he was expecting to bring it from are no longer available, so now he's moving to other sites. So I just said that I would make sure that the testing came to my office before whichever site they're choosing to come from, if it's coming from one or two, and make sure it meets the requirements at that time. Most of these sites are coming from the Toronto area. The big one, as you know, is this subway down in Toronto that seems to be supplying most of our soil in this area.
Yep.
So this lowland that they're looking to, make more productive, and they're going to bring in fill on county roads, so we're not worried about our roads. But are we talking the same amount of fill that went in beside the township office? Or, because I don't have a concept, a visual concept of how much fill people are bringing into our community.
I hate to pass a comment on that because I'm not 100% sure how much fill will come into this area. But the fill will be into a lower section. It will not look like we built a mountain.
Out of a mobile?
It will be leveling of the field. Yes, there could very well be as much or maybe more fill come into this.
But the permit doesn't regulate the quantity? It just regulates where the fill comes from that it's tested?
Not at this time. We do not have anything that states that they can only bring in so much quantity.
Thank you.
Okay. Martin?
Yes, through you, John. I believe it said in the one report the guy had was 10,000 meters. So up to what? And this is all coming from licensed pits then, you said?
No, they won't be licensed pits. They're from
But they will be
areas
checked.
that they will be checked. They run bore samples into them before they start hauling them out, and that is all checked by individuals, and I can get those reports. I've received all the reports previously from the other sites in the township, so.
Okay.
Okay. Jason?
Well, when we talked about the fill in Dundalk there one time, they said every load was tracked. Is that still?
Yes, it's a requirement, as Jim will testify.
And so will you get those reports? Because
I can ask for them.
for every truck?
If I ask for them.
Okay. Because I know a guy that's working in the city right now, and he said a lot of those trucks, they're loaded and they get $700 and we'll see you later. Come back empty and we don't know where you're going.
They're supposed to be tracked.
No, I just
They're supposed to get a ticket when they leave the site, and that ticket's supposed to be handed over when it approaches the site. So I should be able to tell where every one of
For every
those
load?
loads came from.
I thought so.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm not saying I will know where, if every load from that site went to our, well, I'll know which ones came to our site.
Yeah.
That driver could have also went to the Flesherton site. But the
Mhm.
ticket will be in Flesherton, not here.
Okay. Brian?
So, two questions. One is on the diagram there, so I take it the low area is just east of the barns, is that?
I believe so.
Okay. The other question I had is, will they be coming up Highway 6, or will they come up 10 and go through town and across 9?
I was told 6, but that seems like a good route depending on where they're coming from, yes.
Well, if they're coming out of the GTA,
Yes.
I'm thinking they're coming up Highway 10
10.
and through town.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna suggest they come across 89, and at the very least come up 8 and across 9. so that they avoid town. I don't know whether you have the authority to do that or not, but that would be a good suggestion. I think we'd avoid a lot of grief. I think they'd avoid a lot of grief too if they didn't go through town. Just a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir.
Hall route.
Yep. Okay,
Oh,
Barb?
just
Yep.
one other thing. The excess soil management plan, I don't know about anybody else, but I didn't get it all. We only got the odd numbered sheets.
Oh,
Page 3, page 5, page 7, 9, so we didn't,
that would be my error, I apologize, that would be forgetting to push the double page scan on the
exactly,
scanner.
so. That said, I'd be interested in reading the entire thing, so if you could either send it to me or everybody.
Or just the other pages.
Or just the
Yeah.
other pages, exactly.
We can upload or update the agenda with the
Thank you.
complete
That's all.
report.
Yep.
Can we make the Hall route a requirement to avoid Dundalk?
We can certainly, I believe so, I think we should be able to say that if it's coming up 10, it must avoid Dundalk.
Do we make that as part of the resolution?
I'm not sure we have the authority to do it, but that's why I'm saying it would be a good idea.
I would
but-
say put it in the resolution, and then we can pass it on to them.
Sure.
If you want this approved, this is the whole route you
This
guys
is
go.
what you have to do.
Okay,
Okay. So, what she said, or he
yeah.
said, or. Yeah.
We got fingers moving over here.
Thank you, fingers.
That council approve the, I'm just trying to think of wording. That council.
That they enter into a Hall route agreement as discussed.
That council direct staff to enter into a haul route agreement with the applicant as discussed. Does that work?
Okay.
I
And
would
that,
move the amendment.
okay, so Barb will move that amendment. Brian will second it. Any discussion on the amendment part? Okay, all in favor of the amendment? And that is carried. Okay, any further discussion on the whole thing as amended? Okay, all in,
I guess, just to be clear too, though, if the trucks we're getting down into the weeds here, but if the trucks happen to come across 89 and come up from Mount Forest, I don't wanna see them come through Holstein and 109 either. Like, they need to avoid both of those small settlements, because that'll be awful tempting too. If they come up 6, they'll come up and duck in at 109 and come right up through Holstein, and we don't need that either, so. Just,
So
I
I'll
think
draft up an
Six.
agreement that they aren't going through our
They're not gonna stop.
Hamlets.
residential communities or hamlets.
They'll come up the highway, but we'll prescribe that in there.
well.
Yeah.
They're not gonna stop and turn at the spot and then stop at Holstein and slow down through Holstein. They wanna go
That they want straight route and.
Well,
Yep.
They will,
We will
we'll make sure
definitely-
I think
that
you're-
We'll bring it in.
highways and county
You can
roads.
appreciate the sentiment.
Yep.
No,
Okay,
no,
very
for
good,
sure.
thank you.
I've heard somebody before say something about good paper makes good friends or
Yeah,
something.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't stop them when they're empty, going back in and getting a sandwich or something in, but.
That's different.
Yep,
We encourage
okay,
buy local.
okay. So I'll call a question. All in favor? That is carried, and I need mover and seconder for the next one, which is also soil permit. Jason and Martin? How about this one, Bev?
Okay, through the mayor, this is a much smaller project. It is actually removing soil that was excavated from the water tower site in Dundalk, and it is moving it to a location on Glenelg Street, which is quite a low piece of property and has had a pond on it for quite some time. So I'm feeling that we're solving a couple of problems with this one at once. The soil sampling was done by me. I pulled soil samples out of the material that was there and took it to an independent lab in Barrie and had it tested and it came back negative. It's a very small area. We feel it kind of almost is not a requirement for a soil permit because in our bylaw it says any works undertaken by the municipality. So it's really an extension of the water tower, but I want to bring it forth that the council knew about it and could approve it.
Okay. Michael and Barb?
I just kinda wonder how much they're gonna put in there, so we're not gonna create water back up the road. If we fill it too high there, then we're gonna have water back on the rest of those properties.
Jim?
The estimate is about 60 loads to come out. So again, over the 20 threshold kicks in the permit, so we're just following through with process. But as Bev explained, there's an exemption for some municipal works, so it's...
This property does slope fairly quickly to the swamp, so I'm hoping, and I will try to make sure that it is not raised on the west end, and it slopes down. Plus, he has quite a bit of property. This is a large piece of property behind, so he has a lot of property there that we can make sure there's a drainage ditch runs down and enters into the swamp from the backside of it for those other places.
Okay. Dave?
Yeah, the idea here is to create a buildable lot, so there'll have to be a grading plan that takes care of all those off-site impacts, so.
Okay, good. Barb?
So you answered my question about a drainage plan, and I was going to ask, the Santoons property, Dave, is this the property that back in a previous term of council, we were talking about a retirement residence or an apartment building, or there was some kind of road use?
Back with previous owners, there was, well, no, it was Antunes, there was, but that was over at Keppel Street.
Okay, okay. And so would this, by him receiving our fill, we'd have to pay to have it taken somewhere, and we're improving that buildable lot. Is this a future affordable housing development?
Yeah,
we don't know yet.
No, I mean, it's privately owned.
It's
We
privately
can't
owned.
control that, but,
So we're paying to dispose of fill that we have to
Yeah.
dispose of, and they're going to improve the value of their land
and so.
at our cost,
Well, sure, at our cost, but it's a lower cost
then
rather
hauling
than
it.
taking it out to another pit like 10 or 20 kilometers away. So it's the proximity is a huge benefit to us.
Okay.
Jim?
This is part of the landmark contract to deal with, so we were just finding an avenue. Other than that, we were gonna have to, if there was another, not a local source that we could find a permit to do an agreement with or whatever, it was looking like we were gonna take it to Holstein Pit, just because we're not putting material in at Hopeville due to trying to get it rehabbed to go out on the market. So that was our alternative, and seemed like a good working solution for all parties involved.
Well, it's good for the environment too. We're traveling less.
Okay.
Paul route for that?
We had felt that it would follow the same route as what White Rose is taking, other than taking a left at Glen Elk Street rather than
All
a
right,
right.
okay.
Jim?
Question for Beth. With all this soil being transferred back and forth, do you have a specification for the compaction of that material?
The only time I've had specification is the one in Hopeville, or just outside of Hopeville, because it was going to be a building lot, and buildings were built on it, so it was a requirement that the engineer give me specifications and compaction to support the buildings that were designed to put on this. Both of these at this time are open fields. The one in Holstein here will not get a building on it, I wouldn't imagine, for any reason. There's lots of other places to build. And the one in Dundalk could very well, but I cannot see it being over 4 feet deep, so they would have to go below the fill to put their footings in, and then be down on natural soil. If they weren't, I guess at that time we would make that evaluation when we did our footing inspection, say, nope, this isn't good enough soil.
So what would the proper density be for the compaction?
We have to check the building code, the requirement for that build. It's not very high, to tell you the truth. It's something like 150 kilograms per square foot.
Okay. Anything further? All right, I'll call a question on this one. All in favor? And that is carried. I've got a request for a motion to go past noon, and I was really gonna try not to.
Let's do it and then we don't have to worry about it.
I'd rather worry other people about it, because I'm really not concerned even a little, even a little bit here. All right, we'll have a motion to go past noon. Would anyone like to move that? Barb and Martin, any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Okay, mover and seconder for Liam's report on the Transportation Finance Partnership. Brian and Jason? What would you like to add to this, Liam?
I will pass the sheet.
Yeah. Okay.
So good morning, Council. There is two recommendations that require Council approval. The first one is South State's participation in the future of Transportation Finance in Ontario, or FTFO partnership. Some background on the FTFO partnership is an opportunity that was made available to South State to township staff on October 27th, 2022. And effectively, it's a research project which includes representatives from academia, representatives from the public sector and municipal sector as well. And the partnership will be a research project funded by Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, or SSHRC, which is a federal body. The main focus of the research project is on how transportation finance should evolve in Ontario. The argument it makes is that the gas tax is losing purchasing power because we're seeing more fuel-efficient vehicles. We're seeing grants and so on from the government to move towards vehicles that are either hybrid or electric. And so effectively, it says that it argues that municipalities are put at odds often on their transportation policy compared to their climate change policy. It also seeks to to promote an increased role for the federal government in regards to transportation funding. In my conversation with Dr. Matthias Sweet on Monday, he did mention that for the first time ever, the federal government will be involved in transportation funding, but it's limited to transit. Through our conversation, I did mention that transit is great for urban areas, but in rural Canada and rural Ontario, our transit is roads and bridges, which that's how we get around. And he definitely agrees with that, and that's one of the reasons they're seeking rural representatives on this partnership. It'll have approximately 12 partners. There's 4 faculty members from Metropolitan Toronto, Metropolitan University, 2 to 3 partners from the nonprofit industry, 2 to 3 municipal partners, 2 to 3 provincial ministries, and 1 federal representative. The term of the partnership will run from spring of 23 to spring of 26, with quarterly meetings of the Partnership Advisory Committee. And by the end, there will be 5 reports, 5 presentations, a final cumulative presentation, and an online scenario-based toolkit on identifying the transportation gas for each particular municipality based on what your individual scenario is. This opportunity was made available to us through the participation on Good Roads Board of Directors, and that's one of the reasons. It does give Southgate an elevated platform to bring not just Southgate's concerns, but rural Ontario's concerns to a provincial stage, and in this case, even a federal stage. With the Good Roads Board of Directors itself, once annually there is the Queen's Park Advocacy Day. This year it'll be in November, which again allows us to bring Southgate and rural Ontario issues to Queen's Park, where my personal opinion is rural issues are often overlooked or sometimes forgotten. And so staff is of the opinion that continued participation on the Board of Directors is beneficial. Participation on the FTF Ontario partnership also provides a net benefit, and as such, the recommendation is that Council approve Southgate's participation on FTF Ontario, as well as continued participation on the Good Roads Board of Directors. There's also as part of, if Council does approve this, there would be a letter of support that would have to be submitted, which was attachment 1 as circulated by Clerk Green yesterday. If there's any further questions, Mayor Woodbury, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, well, that was a lot of words. And Barb has a question.
Of course I do. Thank you, through you.
Try Dax's prize. Come on.
Gee. Thank you, Akash. And I support the recommendation. We definitely need to take a rural lens on these issues. And I did have one question. And I think you're an ideal person to be representing us with the asset management and the rural concept. Oh, stop it. Are these meetings virtual, or will there be requirement for mileage and hotels and things? Because that hasn't been built into the in-kind donation.
So the FTF Ontario meetings, I've been told that they will be virtual.
Okay.
That's the information I have at this point. For Good Roads, they aren't virtual. However, it is covered by Good Roads. The only cost to the township is the time and expertise staff.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, not seeing any further questions. Oh, okay.
Akash?
Then I am now.
Yeah. Akash, with this going on as a study, could you see it actually being a permanent lobby through? Because as you said, a lot of the rural things are just washed away. They don't seem to think anything past Highway 7 or something.
So it's hard to say, because the FTF Ontario partnership itself is a research project with a strict timeline and strict deliverables. Whether something comes out of that or not is time will tell. I know Good Roads is one of the industry partners, one of the nonprofit partners on this partnership. So there is a very good chance that they will take further steps after the end of the partnership agreement or the grant. After the end of the grant, there's a very good chance they would pick something up along these lines. However, I can't make any guarantees.
The potential's there.
There is a lot of potential, yes.
That's great.
Okay. Not seeing any others. Call the question,
Maybe
except
just
for
a
Dave.
comment on that, but I think there's a 3-year window that they want to stick within to get this done. Will there be another iteration to go another direction? That could be, but this is a 3-year window commitment. Great.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next, we have the consent items. I didn't get anything for anything pulled, so I'll need a mover and seconder to receive. Brian and Barb, any discussion on any of these? Except for, I'd like to welcome our new staff member for finance, and they're gonna start yesterday. So Elaine is as our new member in there. So Barb, go ahead.
Nope,
Nope.
not this one, thank you.
Okay. That's it. Call the question, all in favor? That is carried. Correspondence, I didn't get any of these pulled either, so I need to move and seconder.
Just the addition of the SVCA one.
Yeah.
I don't know, it doesn't necessarily, did you want that pulled, Councillor Dobreen, for further than just receive for information,
No.
or? Oh,
Okay, yeah.
I don't believe so. I was just hopeful that Conservation Ontario press release the other day that just missed the agenda by about 2 hours. And I thought perhaps our planner, Clinton Strudwick, could just elaborate on the letter that you mentioned, that the county, you've got a meeting, Dave mentioned it earlier, just kind of pull it
Yep.
all together and put a bow on it.
Okay, so let's get this on the floor first.
Yes, I will.
You're gonna move, seconder, Martin? Okay. Hi,
Good morning still.
yeah.
Just that, Bill 23, was just introduced, last week, I believe it was. Might have been the end of-
Seems like 3 weeks.
Yeah, it seems like 3 weeks ago, but it hasn't been very long. And it's upended a lot of things in terms of everything from DC charges to conservation authority to planning approvals to you name it. So we're trying to work through what all of this means. Everyone is. And the Conservation Authority has gone through and looked at it through their lens of changing roles and responsibilities. The CAOs, the planners, the lawyers are all chewing through it, and as Dave mentioned, the county CAOs and planners are meeting on Friday morning to go over some of this stuff. This piece of legislation is put in as part of the province's commitment, really, to delivering on their promise for more homes, basically, and the 1.5 million homes but in the next 10 years throughout the province. And essentially what it's doing is it is clearing the way for that, for development to do it and get it done. Municipalities may not like how they're doing it, or conservation authorities may not like how they're doing it, and we don't actually know all of the repercussions that are going to result from this legislation yet, which is why we're needing to review it all. Certainly one of the big ones that is going to impact municipalities is DC charges and no longer being able to collect for that. So that's putting affordable housing directly on the backs of the taxpayer. And maybe that needs to happen, I don't know, but the province, in order to get this job done, that's what they're doing. They're saying, we want this many houses and this is how we're gonna do it. And we'll hopefully have more to report in the upcoming weeks. As was noted, the county is putting together, their planners are putting together a report that's going to be delivered to county council next week, I believe it is.
I think so, 2 weeks.
That report will be available, I think Friday is when it will be available for review, and I encourage everyone to look at that. They've been taking input from all the local planners and lawyers and whatnot to create this report to give an in-depth review of what's happening in that report and in this legislation.
Okay, Dave?
Let me just
then
add
Barb.
to that. I don't want you to fall off your chair because you might misinterpret some of that about DCs. DCs are definitely going to be impacted. There'll still be DCs, just not on specific affordable projects. But the DC bylaw we just put through, in the first year, once this legislation gets well sent, we can only collect 80% of that DC. So 20% has to come out of the taxpayer. 85 in second year, 90, 95, and in the fifth year, Santa Claus is coming to town, we're gonna get 100%. But we don't know whether we can still put on the construction price index January 1st of each year or not yet. Liam came to me yesterday, was it 14 or 15%?
I think it's 15.6%.
So, you know, hope, we gotta have that. But anyway, these are the kind of things. So, what we did in preparation for this meeting, because Southgate requested the county organize this meeting, and there was great support from the other CEOs wanting to do this as well, having a housing meeting. And in preparation for that, we were very fortunate. We had Scott Taylor and Randy Schertzer down here on Monday afternoon. And Clint and I raced them around speedily around the township from 1 to 5 p.m. and showed them some things, some opportunities. We went into Flex Modular and showed them that and the things they're doing. So a lot of things we're seeing. They have a better understanding. And it's very timely that with this Bill 23 that we need to put a different lens on things. You know, there's some people going to have less powers to control things, and if we're truly serious about affordable housing, it's my opinion that we have to change policies to facilitate some of this, or we need to just stop talking about it, and we can't do it. But if we look at what some of the quotas are in Bill 23, for example, Brantford is about the same size as Grey County. They have to find 10,000 new homes in the next 10 years. So that would be kind of our quota in Grey County, I would think. Because they're still saying quotas may come to others. They've kind of went out as far as, I think, Simcoe County and Cowlitz, not Dufferin. But I'm sure we're on the list to get something. Anyway, that's just, stay tuned, more news.
Yeah. Martin, Barb? Oh, Barb first, then Martin?
So, with this press release and it says, prohibiting the entering into agreements where, we fought so hard to have natural heritage commenting in order to avoid having to go into $20,000, $30,000 environmental impact studies where it wasn't even warranted. Those things are being proposed, gone. But yet, on the other hand, they're requiring conservation authorities to enter into agreements with municipalities. There's a lot of unknowns, but my concern is that I don't see this personally requiring developers to make houses affordable. They're just going to be able to build more houses and more apartments, and but I don't see where they're saying 80% of the market value is supposed to be affordable. Well, if the house is listed at $1 million for a townhouse in Dundalk, how is $800,000 affordable for anyone? So I don't see this actually increasing the inventory of affordable or even attainable housing. It just paves the way for developers to build more houses.
So in response to that, I agree. I mean, the response to that, if we create inclusionary housing and say you gotta do X, so if you're putting up 100 homes, you gotta put in 10 or 20%. No, the Bill 23 says we only can demand 5%.
Yeah.
So it's 5 affordable units in 100 homes. That's
Right.
not even gonna get it started.
And what is the county's wait list for assisted housing is 140 people, something like that?
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Yep.
we could be here all day talking
Yeah.
about this
Yeah.
and crying our milk.
Thank you for
No.
allowing it on the agenda. At least we have a heads up, and perhaps that report, when it gets released by the county, the county agenda, could perhaps the mayor-elect share a link to the council and staff, or to Lindsay just so that we can keep ahead of it. Thank you.
We may even have it Friday, that we could scan it and send it, if we can get permission.
Yeah.
Yep. Sounds good. Okay. So any discussion on any of the other stuff for the 9.2? Oh, okay.
I did want to ask about 9.2.1, the Roma Annual General Meeting and Conference. Are we circulating, well, you have circulated an email with regard to the list of conferences for getting people's interest. Can we share some value? I mean, what each of the conferences or links to the conferences so that past conferences, so that the new members of council would be more familiar with, what each brings to the table? I think they're
Yeah, we can try to find just something to, maybe the past conference or something. We can look into that.
Okay. Anything else? All right, call a question on that. All in favor? That is carried. 9.3, need a mover and seconder. Jason and Brian, any discussion on this? It's a strong mayor thing from Wawa. Okay, so then I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Mover and seconder for confirming bylaw. Barb and Jim. Okay, any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. And we have one more motion to go, and I'm going to turn the chair over to 1203. See, we could have made it. I'm going to turn the chair over to the deputy mayor, or the almost mayor, because I'd like to make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting? John?
Yes.
Second? Jason? All in favor?
Aye.
That is carried.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.